Hello, everyone. I'm very excited today to be hosting the absolute first podcast on what we are calling the Ability Conversations, and I'm thrilled to bits to have Vikram Aggarwal, who I may take the luxury of calling a friend. But I have known Vikram for not too long ago, but I have to admit, in the little time that I've known him, I've obviously been very, very impressed by his journey and his vision about EnergySage. So Vikram, as I said, is the founder and CEO of EnergySage, the industry's leading online comparison shopping marketplace for rooftop solar, energy storage, community solar, heat pumps, and other clean energy products. Vikram himself is a recognized leader in the renewables industry. He's frequently quoted in top-tier media outlets such as the New York Times, Bloomberg, Forbes, and various consumer reports. EnergySage and Vikram have been recognized as trailblazers in the industry, receiving accolades from the US DOE, NREL, Boston Globe, Green Tech Media, and the Smart Energy Consumer Collaborative, amongst many, many others. Vikram started EnergySage after more than 15 years of experience with Fidelity Investments. And in his own words, his experience as a private equity investor, advisor, and strategy consultant at Fidelity shaped his understanding of building and growing new business ventures. On that note, Vikram, welcome to the Ability Conversations. And as I said, I'm glad to have you as our absolute first guest.
And thank you, Jayant. And I'm very excited for this conversation. It's always good to look back and think through what we have done and how we have done it and share it with folks.
I think that's a great point to start. And I would, for the sake of our viewers, now as you look back, 2009, it's about 13, 14-year journey already. What's the first thing that comes to mind?
The first thing comes to mind, huh? Yeah, it's, I think, how naive I was. So this is very, very early days in the solar industry in America. People had started thinking about solar, but it was very expensive. Most people did not believe or understand what solar could do for them, how much energy it could generate, that it could actually deliver financial savings. So most of us were very early in the call it the renewable journey, and starting a new business at that time, a disruptive business in a disruptive industry at that early stage with very limited capital was somebody would have said, "What the hell are you thinking?" So yeah, how naive was I? But that's great. You sometimes have to be naive in the early stages of entrepreneurship. Otherwise, you'll scare yourself out and quit.
I can sense almost, while you're not saying it, but almost a great sense of pride in the way you feel about the distance you've covered. In my very early conversations with you, and at that time I was still conceptualizing Ability and what it would do and what its purpose for. The one thing that, in fact, you told me two things, that content for you specifically has been a constant ally, and that you would use content for a very, very specific purpose, which was to say, my number one goal, and I'm paraphrasing, was to just educate, and that's all you would do. So as you look back over the last 13, 14 years, I want you to tell us about what role has content played, in this specific journey. And if you could give us a couple of specific examples of where you think, oh, this is where content really played its role, or this may not have had I not put out that article. Yes. I think that would be absolutely fabulous.
Absolutely. So I'm going to take a little bit longer journey. So my apologies to start with. I guess we are talking content, so I can actually talk quite a bit. So let me start by explaining what content has meant to me and why. So I started EnergySage. I think, Jayant, you just mentioned I was working at a company called Fidelity Investments in their private equity group. And one of the investments that I was involved with pretty closely was in the home building space. And part of the home building space, we were looking at solar as one of the investment areas of interest. Arnold Schwarzenegger, as a lot of you may remember, the Terminator, he was the governor of California in the mid 2000s, and he almost kick-started the residential solar industry in America. So he had announced an initiative called California Solar Initiative in late 2005, early 2006, that led to new home builders, experimenting with putting solar on new home construction. So that is what brought me to learning about solar. So long story short, I had spent about 4 years learning about solar and other clean energy technologies and building more energy efficient homes as an employee at Fidelity. So I thought I knew about this industry. And so I started EnergySage in 2009 and very quickly realized that my knowledge about this industry is at a very high level. As we colloquially call in America, my knowledge was at the 100,000 foot level, which was not good, because here I am trying to tell people what to do about solar and other clean energy technologies, while I'm not that informed, right? So very, very early, I think that my content journey basically started by educating myself, the need to educate myself. And that was step number one in my journey. So I'll take a couple extra minutes. So what I ended up doing was I started as a consultant in this industry. I started helping homeowners and commercial property owners figure out what is the right solution for them. But as I said, I myself did not know too much. I knew it at a very, very high level. So what I did was I started mystery shopping. So I would use my friends and friends of friends, homes and commercial buildings as case studies. And I would bring in contractors for different technologies, including solar, to come and give me a sales pitch, and started learning from it. So I invited dozens of companies to come and present, give a sales pitch for solar photovoltaics, solar thermal, geothermal, combined heat and power systems, small wind turbines, you name it, all the technologies that were of interest to me. And I was learning a lot. I was becoming smarter by the day. So one thing I started doing was, okay, I'm learning a lot. I should write these things down. I should memorialize these. And one thing led to the other. I started writing articles about how should people, what are the big questions that people should be asking, or they do ask, and what are the answers to those based on my research, first-hand research. And that ended up becoming the first EnergySage blog. And I think pretty much it was the foundation of what EnergySage is today. So I'll stop here and give you a chance to ask any questions, but I can keep going even more.
I think that's you make some great points. So I think first and foremost, what I'm taking away from what you just said was that everything that you did once you walked in or created EnergySage came from a very personal need. Yeah. And it was only to fulfill that, when you started fulfilling that personal need, did you realize that, hey, this can be helpful to many more people. And then you thought about it, and I think I would want all of us to, think about that, what is the core? What is it that you want to communicate? And why should it be important to people you are talking to? But if it's important to you, it resonates with you, it should be important to a lot of people out there. I think that was a great starting point.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I think initially I was asking the questions that were important to me, but then I started consulting with others, and I would be a co-pilot to homeowners and commercial property owners on their journey, and I saw what questions they're asking, and started asking those questions and finding the answers to those questions. Sometimes it was just as simple as asking the solar companies in this case, or small wind companies, those questions. And sometimes it needed even more research. It needed data analytics, running numbers, running Excel spreadsheets, and actually doing the math myself and presenting that analysis, not just to myself, not just to my clients, but to anybody who wanted to know about those.
So I think at the end of the day, if you truly want your content to resonate, it has to be very well researched.
Yes.
I mean, that's the one takeaway, Ramoni. You can't, and this is specifically relevant in today's day and age when you have Chat GPT and everyone can create content. And I'm very conscious of the fact that Ability is positioning itself as an AI first company, but I think it's absolutely crucial. I would say that your content has to be very, very well researched. You have to be very sure of who that content is meant for, and then you start creating content. So, which brings me to the next question. And by virtue of being a marketplace, you have a demand side and then you have a supply side. Which of these two was your first customer, so to speak, and therefore you started putting content out for them?
So, as was the case then, and as the case now, we have always been consumer first. So, in the industry, as you can imagine, at least in our industry, there is an information asymmetry. What that means is consumers don't buy solar on a regular basis, for example, right? They are buying it for the first time. And even repeat customers, they may buy solar every 15, 20 years, right? Because the systems, once installed, will last 10, 15, 20, 30 years. So people don't shop that often. While the sellers are selling on a daily basis. They have numerous conversations. So we realized that very early on and said, hey, the consumer needs empowerment. At least in our industry, solar is an expensive, big ticket item. People don't buy things that they don't understand, that they don't really have confidence in. And the best way to drive consumer confidence is information and education. So that was our realization back then, and it still is let's empower the consumer, let's really get them excited about the product. And in that case, they will more readily buy that product versus not buy the product.
So do you think content therefore also had a significant role to play in just building trust around the brand?
Correct. Actually, I would extend it around the product line and the brand, right? So as an average consumer, in our case, as I said, with solar, most people are, hey, is this solar panel going to work? Is it going to damage my roof? What kind of maintenance I would need? What is the right way to finance it? There were a lot of legitimate questions that the consumers did not know. And they were not getting information outside of EnergySage. They used to get sales pitch outside of EnergySage. Even still is the case, right? So we really wanted to make sure that we are giving the right answer to the consumer, even if it meant, please don't do it, right? And that is what builds trust in us as a brand.
Which brings me to another question, and something again that's been on my mind as someone who's trying to build a company. As I was going through your social media posts and I was going through, your website, and when I say you, it's EnergySage, and also for Vikram Aggarwal, I see you create a lot of content yourself and you put it on your social media handle. And it got me thinking as to how important is it for someone who's helming the organization to create a brand for themselves, which in some ways resonates or aligns with the brand that you're trying to build for the company. And is that something you did consciously, or is it something that just come to be now after all these years that you've been in business? And what would be your advice to CEOs or heads of organizations who are maybe just now thinking of, because I talk to a few CEOs who don't believe in social media, who don't believe in content. They say, hey, that's not for us. What would be your advice to them?
Sure. So this is a very, very personal. Thank you for that question, by the way. It is, you're making me think here. I have not really actively thought about that as a strategy, but I think in my case, it just so happened, right? It just so happened partly because I'm a nerd. I really wanted to be an expert. And as I mentioned, when I first started EnergySage, and I realized that I have a knowledge gap. And the job number one is to fill that knowledge gap by doing research, right? So I could have easily asked somebody on my team to become that expert. But I did not do that. I wanted to be that expert. I really wanted to understand what advice we are giving to our customers. So it just so happened that because I ended up spending the time to educate myself, become an expert. I had spent my career in financial services. I had very little idea about solar and other clean energy technologies. So it took me about a year and a half to really get smart about this industry. And no kidding, because I started writing about this topic, I started getting calls from key stakeholders in the industry to say, "Hey, Vikram, what do you think about this?" Right? And the brand, or it just so happened, I was the expert, and because of my interest, I became the face of the company. So I think it depends on your each company's situation. If you, as the leader, CEO, or an executive at a company, if this is not, call it comfortable for you, maybe you find the right people in your company who really are interested in becoming an expert and become the face of the company. That said, as we all know, you are fully committed as a leader to your company. The employee that you choose may not be that committed to the company. So there is a little bit of a risk that comes with it, right? That if they become the expert and then they leave, the expertise kind of walks out. Again, not a deal killer, right? You could have a bunch of experts. You can get a number of your team members to become experts and create that expertise within house. Not every company has their CEO or the leaders who are the experts in the face of the company, right? So there is no one size fits all. But in my case, it just worked out perfect that I really was interested, became the expert, and I really enjoy talking about this subject.
I think I must congratulate you, because I know that it takes effort and it takes persistence, and it's not like a campaign, right? It's a commitment. Content is commitment, and for you to carry that through over such a long period of time, I think it's absolutely fabulous. So congratulations, absolutely on that.
And
so was there a time?
Let me add
Sure.
one other thing. So people who may have known me in the past, I hate public speaking. I hate interviews. I don't like to be on camera. I don't like social media. I'm not comfortable. I had to learn to be comfortable with all of this. So now I'm interviewed by radio, by TV, by podcasts, and be active on social media. Not my comfort zone, but you have to, I think, to make your company successful, you have to tackle your biggest fears and do whatever it takes, right?
That's possibly the best advertisement for ability. So thank you. so thank you for that. Thank you for that. So along the journey, was there a point in time where you really decided to put resources, behind content, where it moved from maybe a 1 or a 2-person initiative, where you said, "No, I need to create this setup"? And when was that? And what really drove you to make that investment? And then, more importantly, what kind of results did you see as an outcome?
Yeah, so the first 2 to 3 years, it was 100% me, while also starting a business, while also running all the other business functions, raising capital, building the product. I was researching and writing the content. That's just part of the entrepreneurial journey, right? So then I think starting, I would say year 3, we started bringing on one person to help us with content. So for the longest time, I would say till about 2016. So that would be about 7 years or so, 6 to 7 years. We had me and one other person who was focused on content. First few years, our content did not deliver results. At least when I say results, is most people write content for search engine optimization to drive organic traffic and generate business. So the first several years, our content did not produce results. And that is one great thing about, if you do believe in content, education, most companies give up after a very short duration of investment, right? We stuck with it. We had debates within the company my senior leaders were questioning my decision to continue to develop content for multiple years, right, without any ROI. And I just stuck with it because guess what? My goal, where we have a manifesto, we have a content manifesto. And the number one reason why we develop content is not for organic traffic, right? It is for education. It is to help people understand industry and consumers alike, right? But consumer first. But once it clicked in 2016, we have not looked back. 2016, something clicked. We hired the right person. We were developing extremely good content, but we did not have good technical help in the company. So our content was there, but the website was not optimized for search engines. So we brought in an intern who looked at our content and said, "You have a great content, but your website sucks, right? So let me let me fix that." So he came in and put in quite a bit of the right tools and structure and really helped. From 2016 on, it took off. And we have now become the most trafficked solar company website in America. And everybody sees what we do, tries to copy us. But guess what? You're not going to see results very quickly. You may be spending money 2, 3, 4 years without seeing that kind of traction. And a lot of competitors, deep-pocketed competitors, came in, try to replicate, but then they give up. And we just keep plowing ahead.
Again, I think those are just brilliant sound bites as far as I'm concerned. So once again, congratulations. Now, as you look ahead, and I'm going to ask a question which I have no idea why I'm asking, but I'm asking it. So do you have aspirations and ambitions to maybe take your business outside the US, and therefore, if that were to be, then what role do you see content playing?
Yeah, we are thinking of going global, and content will play a very, very critical role. So the first thing that we will execute in our plans to go global is to replicate our content and localize it for the markets that we are targeting. As I just said, it takes a while for content to start producing results from a search engine optimization perspective. So my belief is that we would have to start our content journey at least a year or two ahead of when we think we will enter the market, any given market. So we today publish a lot of content. There are dozens and dozens of types of content that we publish, including articles, podcasts. We are getting very big in webinars. Those are really driving a lot of consumer engagement. We have a ton of data. We have a ton of insights that we publish at the local level. Those all will have to be replicated now. So we now have a team of almost 8 or 9 folks who are invested in content. The one thing that I think it's very, very apt for an Indian context. I think there is a saying that it's easy to buy an elephant, but very, very expensive to feed an elephant. So content is one of those. It takes a lot of effort to build your content, but it takes even more effort to maintain your content. So think about that strategy when you are thinking about any kind of content.
I think that brings me to a next question, and again something that I think about. So so far, or at least by and large so far, whatever you're putting out is an outcome of your vision, which fundamentally is I need to educate. Now clearly you are a sizable team. I don't know of too many companies which have 8 or 9 people responsible for just producing content, and there'll be someone who's be in charge of that team, and then you will look to go outside the physical boundaries of the political boundaries of the countries that you're in. How do you as the CEO set vision for content, and then how do you ensure that that vision is actually implemented? Because it could become a case of Chinese whispers at some point. So do you think about that? Is that something that you say, hey, I must put in place these few things such that not for anything, but at least we're able to replicate the success but you may not yourself directly be responsible for what gets created and put out there.
Exactly. So, as I mentioned a few minutes ago, that we have a content manifesto. So I wrote that document almost 6-7 years ago, I would say at this point. We revisit it at least once a year. And anytime a new member of our marketing and content team joins EnergySage, we make sure that they review that manifesto and they essentially hear from me directly how important content is. Not for SEO, but for consumer education, right? So they hear that is our number one goal. That is how we are going to do. And what we do is our manifesto has two guiding principles. Number one is we want to answer questions. We want to tell people what they want to know, right? Very, very simple. So we are constantly listening to the audience, to the consumer audience, about what questions do they have. So that's an easier one. Well, actually, it's easy, but it takes a lot of effort. And number two is EnergySage, because we are an expert, we make a decision on what consumers should know. So it's both what they want to know and what they should know. So that is a constant, that is our foundational element of everything that we do around content. We have a call center. This call center talks to hundreds of consumers in a given day about a lot of topics, right? Not only solar now, but about heat pumps, about commercial solar, about batteries, about EV chargers, about whole home electrification, as we are calling it. Those people are now they've always kept a record of what questions are people asking. And they talk to our content team and say, hey, folks, these are the questions that are being asked. And I don't even know the answer to those. Could you now research and prepare the answers to these questions? We've been doing a series of webinars, and we have hundreds of people joining those webinars, and they are giving us hundreds of questions every webinar that we are running. So we are always keeping those forefront. A lot of companies look at keywords. They will go to Google and they will use the tools to say, what keywords are people searching for? Of course, that is a very important insight that companies should take into account. But our goal is, please don't over-index on what keywords Google is telling us. Let's over-index on what we are hearing directly from the consumers, from the industry, right? Because that may or may not be showing up in your Google keywords strategy today. Google is always giving you a lagging indicator. We have the leading indicator of what topics people are interested in.
I think that's an absolutely fabulous point, and I must say that's something for me to bear in mind too. As I look to build out, my company, is to always make a distinction between leading and lagging indicators.
Correct.
And what's something already out there may be lagging. It will always lag compared to getting first-hand information from customers, partners, suppliers, vendors, employees, for that matter. I think that's a great point. Which then brings me to another interesting thing that I noticed, that you've dealt with various kinds of customers who are in very different points, their buying journey. So you did mention that in California the consumers are far more evolved, and that had to do maybe a lot with the fact that the governor back then, Arnold Schwarzenegger, probably announced subsidies or tax cuts for people who embrace solar, versus consumers in the part of the country where you are, which is Boston, New York, the Northeast, and therefore very different requirements, very different expectations from EnergySage. How did you think of content then, and did you think in terms of buyer personas, and did you have to prioritize one persona over the other? I mean, that seemed like a tightrope to walk. I mean, you want to put out content, but who should this content appeal to? So tell us a little bit about that, and did that ever pose a dilemma?
It does. It does pose a dilemma on a daily basis. Even though we have several people now doing research, conducting research, and developing content, as I mentioned, our call center is mostly talking to folks who are, as we call, at the bottom of the funnel. They're trying to make a decision now, right? So their questions are typically, reflective of a little bit more advanced consumer, or consumer who's very much into the buying process, versus people who are researching and very early phase of their shopping journey, right? So there is always a challenge, like who should we be supporting first? I think the good news or bad news maybe in our case is we had chosen to support both. So as I mentioned, that our team is our call center team and our content teams talk at a very fairly regular basis, daily, weekly basis, and determine what to write. So that may be targeting a little bit more of the lower funnel, but we do make room for top of the funnel content also, because again, we are hearing a lot of questions from folks that may have different levels of sophistication. So it is a bit of a art and a science to figure out what should be answered first and what is the importance of that question. So sometimes you have to basically keep a tabs on how frequently are these questions coming up, and that whether they are top of the funnel or bottom of the funnel, they are the ones that get prioritized more. But that is a dilemma for everybody, every company.
Interesting, very interesting. The other thing I couldn't help but notice, I mean, your website, could be a mini Wikipedia for energy in itself, right? There's just, so much content there. And I noticed it's not just content that you produce, but it's also become, maybe for lack of a better word, like a marketplace for relevant content, where, you're also seeking out content that's written by industry leaders or thought leaders, who write around energy and solar and so on and so forth. How did that come about? That's fairly unique, for a company, to put content out there which is third party. How did that come about?
Yeah, again, our sorry to keep repeating, but our job is to educate the consumer, right? So we think if they are on EnergySage, we should give them all the information in one place. Not make them jump through hoops and say, hey, for this information, you may want to go somewhere else. So we are curating a lot of good folks. So we basically invite folks to write at EnergySage, write for audience at EnergySage. We are bringing a lot of industry experts. We are bringing in folks who are competing with each other for consumers' share of mind, if you would, and bringing them and having them talk to us, talk to our consumers. And consumers really find that valuable, because as they are making this very expensive purchase decision, they value expertise, they value the right people coming in. Again, we are a conduit. It's not just about us. We are a conduit between the buyers and the sellers, and we are bringing all the information in one place. We also share a lot of our data with third-party researchers, people who are publishing independent research. We could easily say, no, we don't want to share our data with you because you're creating competition for us, right? You are publishing analysis based on our data. But for the right data partner, we share our data and let them conduct the research and write or develop content based on that.
Absolutely remarkable. I think absolutely remarkable. I think the last question I have for you, Vikram, is as you look back, and this is a favorite of mine, and if you were to turn back the clock to maybe 2016, which seems like a big event from a content standpoint, or the day you wrote your first blog, and with the benefit of hindsight, would there anything you would have done differently, purely from a content standpoint, and said, hey, maybe I should have made that bet, or maybe I should have gone a slightly different route when it came to putting out either a piece of content, or maybe I would add this line to my manifesto? Anything that comes to mind?
Yes, I bet you there are dozens and dozens of things that you could have done better, right? But one thing I've learned from entrepreneurship is move fast, learn, don't dwell, just keep moving forward, right? You are going to do a lot of things right, you're going to do a lot of things wrong, but don't let that fear of doing wrong or making a mistake stop you. We don't have that luxury. We just got to keep moving forward. The good thing about content, especially, is it's sitting on our web platform. We can edit it at any time. we have made mistakes. We have people reach out to us and saying, "Hey, you're not saying the right thing." We thank them. We really appreciate them spending time on our content and telling us if we are wrong. So I don't dwell. I basically, we want to make sure that we are doing our jobs right. So of course we should do the right level of homework and put the right kind of emphasis, but don't dwell on mistakes.
I think thank you. To me personally, I think you've given so many nuggets, and I'm going to go through this interview maybe 5 more times, and I'm going to write down a few things and maybe create, something like a charter for ourselves. But absolutely, thank you so much, Vikram. I think this was absolutely precious, I have to say. And I'm sure everyone who's going to listen to this is going to take a lot away from your journey. We'll be rooting for you.
Thank you.
As you look ahead, and these are very, very exciting times. So wish you all the best, and thank you so much. If there's anything, closing comments or closing remarks that you'd like to make, then please do so.
Let me think. But thank you, Jayant, first of all, for giving me this opportunity to share our experience. I think we have gone into quite a bit of detail, so no immediate thoughts are coming to mind. But happy to reconvene in the future and maybe revisit some of our discussions.
I'm going to take you up on one thing though, which is I am going to have a webinar, and I'm going to invite you as a speaker.
Absolutely, I would be happy.
Thank you so much, Vikram, and have a great day.
You too. Take care.
Cheers.